Welcome back, everybody. It's time for another Silver and Black Today, an Odyssey Sports Original podcast. Also heard on the radio, if you're listening to us in Las Vegas, on 101.5 FM KDON and the Bet HD2 in Las Vegas. So thanks to our radio audience for joining us. We are here. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget to rate and review as well. So you got a lot of things that you can't forget today. And you can't forget us. That's right. Scott Branson. I'm your host, along with my co-host, Mr. Mo Moton. Mo's senior NFL writer at Bleacher Report. You can follow him on x.com at Mo Moton, Moemoton. I am at LV Gully. The show is SNB Today. As we talk to you on this Thursday, if you're listening to us on the podcast feed or watching us on YouTube, it's game day. That's right. The Raiders, I know it's preseason. I know it's sort of like, okay, yeah, it's a game, but hey, it's football, and it's important football because we get to see some of the players that we need to see what they can do in advance of the season. Who's going to win starting jobs? Who's going to win at cornerback? Who's going to win the RB2, RB3 at running back behind Ashton Gentry? That's the kind of stuff we're going to see in this game against the Seattle Seahawks later today. So we'll get into that later in the show. But first, we got to start off, Mr. Moton, with the fact that the Raiders made a trade. And we know, obviously, we say goodbye to Jakorian Bennett. He gets traded to the Philadelphia Eagles for defensive tackle Thomas Booker, the fourth. He is the fourth. I guess we should be journalistically correct and make sure we include his incomplete title. But this trade, a little polarizing. We did a video here on Silver and Black today asking if the Raiders got fleeced. I'm a little bit more in that. I don't think they got fleeced per se, but we're going to talk through that because Mo's got a little bit of a different view on it. Because a lot of people in Raider Nation, Mo, were looking at this trade and saying, well, wait a minute. Yeah, Jakorian Bennett, it wasn't like he was an all-pro. It wasn't like he didn't get hurt. He did well in spots, but he had a lot to prove. And in camp, he fell out of favor for a couple of reasons. I think one is his size. We know what Pete Carroll likes at cornerback. And two, he probably just got outplayed, apparent to the coaches. At least the coaches thought this. So, Mo, you look at this trade. I want to first get your reaction to the trade, which is a lot of people thought the Raiders could have gotten more, including me. Tell me why either I'm wrong or I'm looking at it and we are looking at it from the wrong lens.
I'll say this. Consider the factors with Jakorian Bennett. He's coming off of a torn labrum. He's coming off of an injury. He missed half the season. He's got, 10 good games on his resume. Remember, because his rookie year wasn't good. Remember, I've come off his rookie year, people were saying, oh, maybe Jakorian Bennett is not starting material. Then he comes into his second year. He plays in 10 games, but he starts in 7 of them. And he doesn't finish the second half of the season. So you have to factor that into his trade value. Yes, he's young, and yes, he played well when he was available, but he has 7 to 10 good games on his resume. What do you think you're going to get with for a player who's got less than a full season of solid play on his resume? And oh, by the way, these teams do research on other teams. You don't think the Eagles knew that he was falling out of the rotation? You don't think the Eagles read up on training camp reports that Jakorian Bennett was running with the third stringers? So they probably felt like, and I'm not reporting this, but in all reality, if the Raiders couldn't trade Jakorian Bennett, he was going to be riding the pine. Right? So, and the Eagles knew that. So they pounced on a situation where they can get a young player with upside and swap a rotational defensive tackle, Thomas Booker IV, for him. This is basically a swap of backups. A potential backup cornerback at Jakorian Bennett, who was passed up on a depth chart, as you said, by the Cameron Richardson, who had been running with the first stringers, for a rotational backup defensive tackle. So it's a backup for a backup, essentially.
Yeah, so that all makes sense, and you and your logic is the fact that you look at Jakorian Bennett though, and I think that just like any other player, commodity, whatever it may be in the world, there's a view of upside. There's a view of potential. Now, to your point, you pointed out fact as far as the numbers around Jakorian Bennett go. When I look at how everyone has evaluated this trade, I find it's kind of somewhere in the middle. A lot of folks, if you had to give a letter grade, a lot of people think that the Eagles got the better of the deal because of their need at cornerback, and the fact that Howie Roseman seems to hustle everybody. I mean, Howie Roseman's trade record is so unbalanced in his direction. So I think people are looking into that as well. And I think Jakorian Bennett could they not have, and to your point, coming off the injury, all that, but could they not have, could a more seasoned GM maybe eked another, I don't know, a draft pick out of this as well, seeing as though Jakorian Bennett was a player who seems to have a good reputation around the league as someone who could turn into, if he stays healthy and all the other jazz, a top cornerback perhaps.
To be honest with you, I don't think the Raiders would have got anything more than a late round draft pick.
Mm-hmm.
And that draft pick may not have been in 2026. It may have been a 2027 pick. Because again, if you're looking at his trade value, he had a small sample size of solid starting play, about a half a season, coming off of an injury-riddled year. And if you want to say the Raiders could have got a draft pick, fine. But you say that the Eagles got a player at a position of need. So did the Raiders. Let's not forget they let go of Christian Wilkins, and they need bodies in the middle at defensive tackle. So the Raiders also got a player who can help them at a position of need as well. So these were two teams who swapped players who probably weren't going to get a lot of playing time on those teams. And now with the swap and their new destinations, they could potentially get more playing time. Jakorian Bennett has a pathway to be a starter because the Eagles' number 2 cornerback position is up for grabs. And again, outside of Adam Butler, who's locked in to get a ton of snaps at defensive tackle for the Raiders?
Absolutely.
So Thomas Booker could be more valuable to the Raiders than he was with the Eagles. Jakorian Bennett could be more valuable to the Eagles than he was with the Raiders because both teams have needs at those positions.
Yeah, I think that's an important piece here to consider. And by the way, just some detail on Thomas Booker, the fourth. Thomas Booker. He is 25, of course, 2022 fifth-round pick by the Texans. He played one season there. Then he was on the Eagles practice squad. And here's what I think is encouraging. He was on their practice squad and then played in all 21 games for the Eagles last season. Yes, he was rotational. Yes, it wasn't like he was playing 50% of snaps or anything like that. But the fact that he played in all 21 games, Mo, I think points to the direction that when he was in there, you don't play a rotational guy if he's not getting the job done, even if he's on limited snaps.
Right. And if you read Eagles reports, he had been working his way up the depth chart. He had been working with the second team defense in Philadelphia. Let's keep in mind what Howie Roseman does and how he builds his rosters. The Eagles are always very deep along the defensive line. So he's working for reps behind Jalen Carter. He's working for reps behind Jordan in the middle there. So last year also they had Milton Williams. So you knew that even with him on the field, he wasn't going to get a ton of snaps. But now that the fact that he was working his way up the depth chart behind 2 former first rounders tells you a lot about his progress.
Yeah.
And what he can do as a young player. You know, Jakorian Bennett's a young player, a lot to prove with a small sample size. Thomas Booker's only 25 years old, right? I know the Houston Texans drafted him in the 5th round of 2025, and he kind of didn't have a role there. And as I said, Philly has some depth along the defensive line. But when you look at the work he's put in the training camp, you're looking at a young player. And oh, by the way, the Raiders have an executive they hired away from the Philadelphia Eagles that's now their player personnel exec. So there is a connection there between the Raiders front office and Thomas Booker IV. You don't think that Raiders exec who's in Philly has some intel on Thomas Booker IV? I'm sure he does.
Yeah. No, that you brought that up yesterday online, and I thought it was a key point. People forget the relationship thing here, and they see something in that player. They don't. It's not just like, hey, buddy, come on over. I'm going to give you a job. No, they see something there. And what's interesting to me around this whole situation is, we often see this because how you don't see trades very often that are so lopsided that it's like, oh my gosh, we got the best of this deal, whatever. And so you're always going to give up value to get value, right, Mo? So when you give up a player like Jakorian Bennett, yeah, he's got upside there. Whether or not he reached his full potential with the Raiders or not doesn't matter. He's got potential, and the Eagles need some help there. Then you look at the Raiders side of things, and I think it's been conspicuous out of all of the reporting I'm seeing out of Henderson in the training camp. We're not hearing a lot about the defensive front, right? Now, we've heard Pete Carroll talk about it in Tuesday's press conference about, hey, we need help up there. We need to get better up front. He said that in response to questions around the trade for Thomas Booker. And so to me, it's like, yeah, you hate to see a player like that go because you think he can be something special perhaps, but you have those other needs. And guess what, folks? You got to have a pass rush to help those cornerbacks on the back end.
And you need it up the middle. As I said, other than Adam Butler, maybe Jonah Laulu is the other guy that may get a lot of snaps at defensive tackle. The Raiders need a stronger rotation in the middle. And Thomas Booker wasn't going to start over Jalen Carter. He wasn't going to start over Jordan Davis, those 2 first-rounders in Philly. He could potentially play 50% of the snaps with the Raiders. And oh, by the way, give credit to DeCameron Richardson because he factors into this as well. If DeCameron Richardson didn't look like the real deal at practice, they probably wouldn't trade Jakorian Bennett. But it's clear. What did Pete Carroll say on, Tuesday? He believes in the guys that they have. Yes. It's clear they're very high on Darian Porter and DeCameron Richardson and Eric Stokes. And it's clear that DeCameron Richardson had surpassed Jakorian Bennett on the depth chart. So really quick, Scott, if the Raiders did not trade Jakorian Bennett and they had him as the 4th cornerback, people will go, why is he collecting dust on the sideline? You should have traded him. Why didn't you trade him? The Raiders are always late with their trades.
Yes.
So they get ahead of it. They see Jakorian Bennett's falling behind. They trade him before he loses even more value. Because I said teams read training camp reports.
Yes. Dude on the couch would have been on X talking about how terrible.
Exactly.
That's the way it goes. All right. So there you go. We're caught up to speed on the trade. Of course, we also know Lonnie Johnson Jr. broke his leg. Terrible, terrible injury. We hope he gets better there. We're going to step aside for our first break here on Silver and Black today. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about what's going on at running back. How's Ashton Gentry doing? Well, we know he can run the ball, but what else is he doing that's catching the eyes of those covering training camp? We'll talk about that, and especially a report from Albert Breer, who was out at camp, and what he had to say. All right, so hang in there. You're listening to and watching Silver and Black today, an Odyssey Sports Original podcast. Also heard on the radio, 101.5 KDON in Las Vegas, as well as the Bet HD2. We're coming back. It's Mo, it's Scott. It's more right after the break. Welcome back, everybody. It's time for segment 2 of the show, Silver and Black today. Scott Gilbranson, Mo Moten with you on KDON 101.5 FM in Las Vegas if you're listening to us there, or on the Bet in Las Vegas early morning when it runs. And of course, we're an Odyssey Sports Original podcast. Make sure you subscribe wherever you get your audio. Don't forget, rate and review. We appreciate that very much. Mo, we talked about the trade in the first segment. Now we're going to get into some more training camp reports. Obviously, the Raiders have their first preseason game later on today on Thursday against the Seattle Seahawks. And I could tell Pete Carroll got asked all the questions, the media in Las Vegas. Oh, what about your history? What about you? Blah, 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 blah. He's like, yeah. We know. He was hurt. Pete Carroll's got so much energy, and he was not being dismissive, but you could tell he wasn't really excited to talk about it. Not because he's got negative feelings, but he's got a job with the Raiders now. But it's always special, and people in Seattle love Pete Carroll. So it's kind of ironic that he goes back for his first game as a coach since he left the Seahawks to coach the Raiders up in Seattle. But one of the names we're hearing about, Ashton Gentry, of course, the number 6 overall pick in the NFL draft, the Raiders' first rounder, a guy who I think is going to light it up this season for the Silver and Black. But we're not hearing about his running. Yes, we heard about his passing early in camp. Now, to the surprise of some reporters, they're working on his pass blocking. And Albert Breer, who was not one of the people surprised by this, but he reported on it, was talking about the fact that Ashton Gentry and Pete Carroll specifically are spending a lot of time on pass blocking. This is something you didn't see a ton of him do at Boise State. Was one of the criticisms, or I should say the negatives of drafting Ashton Gentry as put forward by all the draft gurus. But Mo, this is a good sign. Clearly in the NFL, even though you're going to have these 2, sometimes 3 tight end sets with Bowers and Mayer blocking, you got to block as a running back in the NFL if you want to be one of the great ones. and if you want to be able to give your quarterback a chance to stay upright.
Right. It's basic football 101. If you're a running back and you want to get on the field on third and passing downs, you have to be able to pass block. And that's why I believe I said this when they drafted Ashton Gentry. That was one of the areas that he was going to have to work on. Not that he was terrible in pass blocking, but that was one of the areas he needed to sharpen up. As I said, a lot of these young running backs don't get on the field on third down on pass catching situations because they would get their quarterback blown up in the backfield. And if you cannot protect your quarterback on third down, you will not be on the field on third down. And Ashton Gentry is showing up in that area, and it's good to hear because now he can unlock, or the Raiders can unlock that pass catching potential that he has. We saw it in his second year at Boise State. We can see it in his first year at the Raiders based on these reports. So it's good to see that you want your number 6 overall pick, the top running back in the class, to be able to do it all. And it looks like Ashton Gentry is on his way to doing it all for the Raiders out of the backfield.
Yeah, no doubt. And it's just interesting to me that that some people would be surprised by it, but nonetheless, I think Ashton Gentry, he wants to be, and he's such a gifted athlete. And I think that when you're an athlete and you're competitive, you not only want to win and you have your team win, and obviously have the Raiders go to the ultimate prize, the Super Bowl, and win it, but also you want to be a great one. And the great ones work on their games, and specifically they work on those areas, as you mentioned, where they're deficient, right? Nobody's perfect. I mean, there's been a few athletes who come pretty dang close, but other than that, you have to work on it. And to me, Ashton Gentry knows if he wants to be a great one. Also, guess what? What happens in this offense, Mo, when you have a running back who can give a really good initial block and then free themselves up for what? Right? That swing pass. We've been hearing about that in camp too. Talk a little bit about how the offense uses it and how a blocking running back like Ashton Gentry, or I should say how a running back like Ashton Gentry blocks, and how that also will free him up in the passing game.
It also allows Chip Kelly to be versatile with Ashton Gentry. So now, like you said, the swing passes, the screen plays where you see a running back look like he's gonna just block, and then he cuts out to the flat or the middle of the field, catches a short pass, takes it down 15, 20 yards. Those are the easy completions, the easy gains you can get with a versatile running back who can sufficiently block and can catch out of the backfield. There were clips out of camp also of him beating Devin White on a route. Now, he didn't reel in the pass, I believe, but you're seeing the complete player, the blocking, the moves that he makes, the route running. Now, the catching, he has that don't worry about highlights from camp where he drops one ball. Look at his Boise State film, and you can see he can catch the football. Don't worry about that. So Ashton Gentry coming in as the total package right now.
Right. So then we look at Mo, the other running backs in camp. Of course, we know the Raiders signed Raheem Mostert from the Dolphins. Older guys had some injury issues, obviously, but it looks like everything we're seeing and hearing from camp is that he's kind of got that RB2. That's what they're counting him on. Again, he's got to stay healthy, and we'll see what happens the rest of the camp. But then you have Sincere McCormick, Zamir White, both guys that I thought were cut candidates, and I thought that the Raiders might go out and sign some other running backs as well. We've not seen that. But when you look at that battle for RB2, RB3, it looks pretty clear where they're going, having the veteran there. But I still think this is an area, even as good as I think Ashton Gentry is going to be, this is an area just to watch from a depth perspective, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Raheem Mostert has an injury history that dates back to his time with the San Francisco 49ers. There's a reason why he had a slow start to his career is because he hadn't been available. And last year he had some injury issues where he missed some time as well. So as you mentioned, he's older, some tread on the tires, but I'm more concerned about his injury history. So I've heard different opinions about how much workload Ashton Gentry could get. You drafted him 6. You give him a massive workload. But what if Ashton Gentry needs a breather? What if he's not available? What if, it happens? What if injuries strike there? So I'm a little shaky on the running back position. I still think they're going to trade Zamir White because I just think he's fallen out of favor. Wouldn't be surprised if he ends up in Tennessee. Dave Ziegler is the assistant GM over there. Dylan Laube hasn't shown much. Kind of disappointed in him because I feel like he could be the pass catcher out of the backfield. Sincere McCormick, I think he'll get that third running back position. I would still add a young veteran, just in case you have an injury issue with Raheem Mostert, who has a history.
Yeah, that's the situation here too. And again, I don't know, because you're right. And look, Ashton Gentry's been a healthy guy, but this is the NFL. It's the beating he's going to take, and the workload because I agree with you. I think the workload's going to be heavy, as it should be, and I think he can handle it. I know there's been some concern from some pundits about his size and what that translates into the NFL. I just don't see that, but I do think you get a guy banged up, and you're right. You need that quick back there. Mostert's not that guy, and so you start to think about it. But the Raiders might say, you know what, we have needs that are greater than that, and so we're going to focus on those, as we saw with the trade and the defense and some of the deficiencies there. So we'll see what happens. But I do think that this competition moving down, if they really felt that one of those guys between McCormick and Zamir White, and I think you're right, I think it's going to be McCormick, but if those guys both they had concerns with and were like, we can't go in with these two, then I think they would have maybe made a move. Now, there could be cuts. Again, players happen when we get to the first cut. You're going to see some players on the street, and the Raiders then might be interested, right? I mean, I think that's the thing too, is you have this entire preseason right up until you get to the first week of the season in September to go out and get a guy if they feel like they need it.
Right. And in Seattle, I know Pete Carroll's a defensive-minded coach, but in Seattle, Pete Carroll had some guys who weren't necessarily top draft picks or elite players at running back that produced. Chris Carson comes to mind immediately. He was a 7th-round pick, and he was leading rusher for the Seattle Seahawks at a time. They had the late Alex Collins, who unfortunately passed away, who was a middle-round pick, I believe, out of Arkansas, who was leading that backfield at a time. So it's not to say that Pete Carroll and the Raiders have to go out and get a big name at running back. I just want to see another player with a healthier track record than Raheem Mostert. Raheem Mostert still has some speed, don't get me wrong, and he can be reliable as a third down guy because he is good in pass protection as well, and he can teach that to Ashton Gentry. I just want to make sure that the Raiders have a complete running back group outside of Ashton Gentry ready to go.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a must. So we'll see how it goes. And speaking of, again, we talk about Geno Smith. Want to give a shout out to it was Pastor Mike who called in. Remember when Pastor Mike called in? Was it Pastor Mike?
It was Pastor Mike with the dome stat.
With the dome stat. So I made a video so you can catch it here on the channel if you're watching us on YouTube about it. But man, I have to say, again, we're objective here on the show, but I was like, the more I looked into the stats as I did just to do the video, there's something there. Like again, and then I have somebody arguing with me because you can't go on YouTube without somebody arguing with me about that SoFi is not a dome. And I'm like, it's a dome. It's a dome. Right. But anyway, you look at the schedule, you look at what's going on that. Really watch that video. But Mo, and I got a shout out to Pastor Mike because that stat, I've heard no one else talk about it. That covers the Raiders. So Pastor Mike, thank you for giving us the idea, which became the video. But Geno Smith, again, I think that as long as the Raiders can keep him upright, I'm interested to see how he runs this offense when we get some live action against the Seahawks later today.
Kind of reminds me of the Lions last year. The Lions played, I believe, 14 games indoors, and then that really helped Jared Goff.
Yeah.
And it's the reason why I think the Lions aren't going to be as good this year. Lions fans have come at me online. But the terrain makes a difference. The environment does make a difference for some quarterbacks. Some quarterbacks are better indoors than they are outdoors. Jared Goff, Geno Smith. Some quarterbacks are they shrivel up in cold weather. We all know the narrative around the quarterback who once had an issue with cold weather. We won't bring his name up, but but these factors do matter. And with the Raiders playing indoors, I think I've said this all along. I think Geno Smith is going to have a pretty good season. Do I think he's going to be an all-pro player? No. Geno Smith does throw some interceptions. With pushing the ball downfield, mistakes happen. He's going to throw the ball to the other team at times. Just prepare yourself for that. But he's going to have some spectacular games indoors where he's hitting Brock Bowers and Jacoby Myers and hopefully Dante Thornton and Jack Besh and Michael Mayer. He has the playmakers around him to spread the ball around and have over 4,200 yards and 30 touchdowns. It's just a matter of execution. And the Raiders, their offensive line has to get it together. They have to have a cohesive unit there. We've talked a lot about that. There's a lot of buzz about that. Fans are a little anxious about Jackson Powers-Johnson, where he's playing. But if the offensive line gives Geno Smith some time to throw from the pocket, he should rack up some yards and some touchdowns through the air.
Yeah, and listen, I think you look at the splits, because when Pastor Mike told us about that on his call a few weeks ago, I waited, and then this week I finally got to it. When you look at the splits, it's pretty remarkable. And you talk about Geno Smith doesn't throw hardly any interceptions inside in the domes. So to your point about turnovers, if that continues, and remember the Raiders playing 9 games at home, right? 8 games at home, sorry. So you already have that advantage. So the trade to bring him to Las Vegas looks even more brilliant if they relied on analytics, which so many front offices do today. So maybe the Raiders have an opportunity. And I think, to your point, will he be an all-pro quarterback? Probably not. But could he be one of those guys who's just like, I called it in the video, could he be a cheat code? Like this year, he might just have a phenomenal year. And if the offensive line holds, Ashton Gentry has the kind of year he can, to your point about all the weapons, Bowers, Mayer, Jacoby Myers, Besh, all those guys, Thornton, then it could be crazy. And again, I'm not trying to gin people up because we've said we've held fast to our 8-game win total, but it's going to be fun to watch, and we'll get to see the start of that tonight on Thursday night in Seattle with the Raiders taking on the Seahawks. All right, we're going to step aside for our final break. When we come back, guess what? It's time for the Raider Nation Switchboard. We're going to get to your phone calls. And so do us a favor, make sure you subscribe to the podcast wherever you get it. Also, that YouTube channel, we just talked about that video that I did on Geno's dome stats. He's the king of the domes. Go check it out and make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel, and you can watch the show there as well. It's Mo, it's Scott. We're coming back right after this. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. Home stretch here on Silver and Black today, an Odyssey Sports Original podcast. Also heard on the radio in Las Vegas, 101.5 K-Dawn and the Bet HD2. Total Odyssey domination there. If you get that, that's our family. So we appreciate it. Scott Branson, Mo Moten back with you, and we're going to get to your phone calls here. And Mo, I had a caller we're going to play in a minute, Terry. Terry also texted us and said, hey, his wife says he doesn't talk very clear. I thought his call was fine. So Terry, I just want to tell you, I'm sure your wife is lovely, and I'm sure she's a great woman, but let her know I can understand you fine. And so we're going to play your call here coming up last in the rotation here. But we're going to get right into these calls. And Mo, there's a lot of talk, obviously, in Raider Nation about the trade and all of this. I think people, the overall feeling of positivity is just still, I think, off the charts, man.
As it should be. The excitement should be there under Pete Carroll. Now it's just a matter of it translating on the field. The players are saying all the right things. Pete Carroll saying all the right things. Let's see it produce on the football field now.
Got it. Oh, yeah. Production matters. Yes, it does. All right. Let's jump right into these phone calls. We want to make sure we give you the time to do it. And first up, we have Gen X Raider, which I love that name.
Gen X Raider.
Right? Because
not Millennial Raider, Gen X Raider.
No, that's my generation.
Yeah.
For us old. And I had somebody say, hey, okay, boomer. I'm like, dude, do I look 70? Okay, I might look a little older than Mo here. I get it, but some people, generation. Okay, here's Gen X Raider.
Hi, Scott. Hi, Mo. This is a new caller. This is Gen X Raider from Massachusetts. I watch you guys on YouTube. I absolutely love your show. Probably my favorite source of information on the Raiders that is out there. Scott, I think I'm a couple of years older than you, hence my caller handle. I was a little too young to enjoy the Raiders' first Super Bowl win for the 1976 season. At least I wasn't really following the NFL then. But I have been a fan since about 1979. Mo, I wanted to mention I actually grew up just outside of New York, in Westchester County, But back then, both the Giants and the Jets sucked, and all my friends were mostly Dallas Cowboys fans. These were the days of Roger Staubach. Yeah. But I wanted to go a different route, so I became a Raiders fan. I always liked the way they played when I saw them on TV. But for this season, I'm just going to go ahead and say I'm completely neutral about this year. I won't even say I'm cautiously optimistic. I've gotten burned too many times in the past 10, 12 years. The 2016 season being an exception, which was glorious until Derek Carr injured his leg. So at this point, I'm a blank page when it comes to expectations. I like most of the coaching hires. I'm eager to see how Chip Kelly improves this offense. I'd say it's pretty simple. The offense has to score about 23 to 26 points a game, and the defense has to allow no more than maybe 22 or 21 points. It's probably easier said than done. But the name of the game for me is really for the offense to convert third downs and score touchdowns in the red zone. And the defense has to limit yards and get off the field on fourth down. That's about it. It seems simple, but I mean, a lot of other teams are doing that. It should be easier for the Raiders to do this year with the coaching that they have now and some of the players they picked up. I would like to see more turnovers generated. You guys mentioned that on this week's show. But I think the Raiders could easily lose the first 3 games of the season. I don't want to be pessimistic, but I mean, for the first game, I'm not sure how good Drake May will be, but the Patriots will be better coached with Vrabel there. And then you have the Washington Commanders and I think the Chargers. They'll be tough as well. So I'm just going to, lower my expectations. I see the floor being about 5 wins. That's kind of low, and the ceiling could be anywhere from maybe 10, maybe 11 wins. So that'd be great if they could do that. And finally, just wanted to say I'm very conflicted about Tom Brady being part owner. He owes us big time, especially after the debacle that was the Tuck Rule game. I've been living in New England for a long time now.
All right, there you got cut off. Gen X Raider. See, you're learning though. It's your first call, and by the way, for your first call, gotta give him some love. I appreciate it. I mean, he did well on his first call and brought up some good points there. I get being burned and wanting to not get too bought in because then you're going to get your feelings hurt again. I mean, it's like one of the first girls I dated in college. I was in love with this girl, man. And then all of a sudden, bam. So I was afraid to jump back in. And then I met a woman. And I've been married to her for 30 years. There you go. So it's interesting his points that he brings up there, though. But what's your reaction to him, Mo?
A lot of good points there. I agree with him on the turnovers factor. I've been harping on this for quite a while. I think the Raiders need to get a veteran safety back there. Jordan Whitehead is available. John Johnson III is available. Marcus Williams is available. You mentioned at the beginning of the show, Lonnie Johnson Jr. is out with a broken fibula. Now, Pete Carroll is optimistic about his recovery, but he's going to be out for at least a month. And that first month, as Gen X Raider pointed out, could be tough. At the Patriots, I think the Raiders can beat the Patriots because the Patriots have a new regime there with Mike Vrabel there. But Mike Vrabel is, as Gen X Raider pointed out, an experienced coach. So is Pete Carroll. So I think it's even there. I think actually Pete Carroll has a coaching advantage there. He's been coaching a lot longer as a head coach than Mike Vrabel. Drake May will see what he is in his second year, but I think the Raiders can win that game. The Josh McDaniels bowl game. Yeah. The Chargers game Monday night is going to be tough. I have the Chargers winning the division. And at the Commanders, considering what they did last year, getting all the way to the NFC Championship game, also tough. So I agree there, Gen X Raider. Could be tough. I still say the Raiders win 7 games. I think the floor for them is 6. Just a quick note, Scott. Pete Carroll teams have never won fewer than 7 games. So at his worst in Seattle, 7-10. And that's why I'm with the Raiders.
And him and Geno Smith have never together had a losing record. So take that for what you will. By the way, I think the Patriots game is a must-win for them. I know it sounds crazy but as he pointed out, you then have the Commanders, who I think the Commanders, I'm a huge Jaden Daniels fan, as everybody here knows, but I think the Commanders might take a little step back. It's kind of natural because they overachieved despite how good they were in certain areas. So I think they might step. So that game might be more in play than we think. If the Raiders come out of the blocks really firing on all cylinders, and then the Charger game is going to be tough. So we'll see what happens there. But appreciate the call, Gen X Raider. Keep calling in, and I'm glad you're not a mass hole. Right? No, he's a good dude from New England. All right, Raider Dougie's up next. Here he comes.
Hey, Scott. Hey, Mo. This is Raider Dougie, formerly T Dougie, changing it up a bit. Figured just make it more Raider-esque in the name. From Central Cali. So I just saw the Jakorian Bennett news. I get it. We all kind of saw that coming just based off the reports of him on the depth chart. But when he was out there, and every time I did hear, it was never because of how he played. He made plays in camp. We saw him do really well last year. I mean, he had a really good day against Jamar Chase when we played the Bengals. And I always thought he had all the talent, and everything reported said he was making plays in camp. I personally don't feel like we got a good trade for the talent he has. I get it. He doesn't fit the scheme. He doesn't fit the mold. But, you know, I'm a short guy too. I root for our short teams out there. You know, to me, it's just like, let the play speak for itself. I get that maybe he wasn't the best fit, but I feel like, you know, when you have a league like the NFL where there's so many injuries, you keep all the talent you can. And even if we force them on the bench throughout the season, I mean, you never know. I mean, the DB room is one of the most injury-prone room. And, you know, if someone goes down, you have a guy right there in Jakorian Bennett that could step up as your cornerback 3 or 4. And who's going to complain about that? I know we needed some deep tackle depth, but personally, I think he was way too talented just to be traded for nothing. And I would have kept him for a good depth piece because now the cornerback room looks a little thin with one injury. Just my opinion. But I get it. Like I said, I'm not blind to it. I never understand why we trade talented players for nothing. And hopefully I'm wrong about it, but we'll see what happens. But anyway, guys, let's love the show and look forward to seeing you guys come on daily. So I'm getting ready for the season. Have a good one. Go Raiders.
There's Raider Dougie, aka T Dougie.
T Dougie.
He's swapped up his name, so that's good. But you know, he mentioned what I mentioned in the first segment, right? Which is that people look at the value. But again, you know, he's like, well, yeah, you need depth on the defense. Yeah, you need defense. You lost one of the guys you invested a ton of money in to play defensive tackle, who's now gone, and so then you have to triage. For you medical professionals out there, you have to triage, which is, okay, yeah, does it make your cornerback room thinner? Yes. But which is more thin, the defensive tackle position or cornerback? And who do you feel better about at that point? And clearly the way the Raiders made this trade, Mr. Moten, was they felt like they needed to go out and get help inside in order to help that cornerback group in the back end.
So it's clear to me that the Raiders looked at their cornerback room and looked at their D-line rotation and said the D-line rotation is weaker than the cornerback room.
Right.
As I've said in the first segment, it's very clear that the Raiders really believe in Darian Porter and DeCameron Richardson and Eric Stokes. I get Raider Dougie's point and I agree with it. One injury at the cornerback position, the Raiders are super thin at cornerback.
Right.
I think they're actually going to add another cornerback either via free agency or trade after this move with Jakorian Bennett. But I will say this, and I'm going to say this again, Scott. With Booker coming in, I think I'm not saying Booker is going to light the world on fire, right? He was a rotational player in Philly. But I think people are underestimating how weak the defensive line could be. Mm-hmm. Would you rather have a player who's going to be potentially your fourth cornerback based on reports out of training camp? He was running with the third stringers. Yes, he was making plays at training camp, but he was running with the third stringers, Scott.
Right.
Would you rather have a guy who's going to probably be your third or fourth cornerback or a guy who could potentially play 50, 60% of the snaps on the defensive line at also a weaker position?
Well, and Mo, I think people forget, to your point about underestimate, they look at Max Crosby and to them, that's the defensive front. And it's like, no. You got to have the inside pass rush again, right? You could have 18 cornerbacks. If you don't have any pass rush, they're going to be running all over the field. It's going to be tough to keep up. So I think you're right. That they looked at the depth up front and said, we got to make a move here. And you're right. They're not done. That's the other thing. You don't know who's out there. A lot of people still looking. You talked about safety earlier. Justin Simmons still out there, right? There's some guys that that the Raiders may, as they get further along in the process, go do. But I can't imagine they don't bring in another cornerback because it's just a numbers game at that point, and who's going to be available. You never know who gets cut, gets let go, or is willing to be traded. You might be able to trade a 7th-round pick next year for another young cornerback who fits more of the defense's mold and what Pete Carroll's looking for. So we'll see it, but good stuff and all good, I think, conversation around that trade. All right, now we're going out to our buddy Terry. As I mentioned, Terry is calling in from Cali, I believe.
Oh, yes, this is Terry with Houston from Porterville, California. I just want to piggyback off of a caller who mentioned every year we have something that sets us back, the Raiders, and I didn't hear Henry Ruggs' name thrown out there, but he was a big reason why we didn't get Jalen Carter. And I really wanted Jalen Carter, but you can't take it would be poor judgment to take Carter after a woman was killed with her dog, and it's all because of Henry Ruggs. So I just want to throw that name out there. And also, as far as Wilkins, I don't know how many, if it's 8 weeks to recover, he had like 3 8-week periods. And so I don't know how far the Raiders are supposed to wait. His treatment obviously wasn't working. And so they had every right to use that veterans termination. And that's kind of my point. I like your program. You guys are honest. You have great guests. And I hope July, August is just as well as you did in July. Have a great day.
All right, there's Terry. See, Terry, I understood you fine, man. Yeah. But he mentioned the Wilkins thing. Yeah, I think, look, no matter what happened with all the weirdness in the locker room, which is, a whole different issue that clearly the team had to deal with. You look at a player, and we've seen this. So how many times have we seen this, Mo? Not just with the Raiders, other teams where guys get injured, and there's guys that work hard to get back from injuries, and there's guys who just seem to be like, oh, I got an extended vacation.
I don't know what the deal was with Wilkins' recovery, but there's a reason the Raiders are going after his guaranteed money. Clearly, they feel like he breached the contract agreement, so that's a whole separate situation that's going to play out with an arbitrator and a grievance and all of that matter. What I will say about the defensive tackle spot, since there are a lot of fans that still bemoan, why did the Raiders draft Jalen Carter? And as Jerry pointed out, there was a whole Henry Ruggs incident that would have optically made it, questionable at best, considering the stuff that was going on with Jalen Carter when he was coming out, into the draft. So I understood why they didn't want to go in that direction. So I won't go into the Jalen Carter bag right now. But I will say with the defensive tackles right now, Thomas Booker coming in, there's a possibility Thomas Booker could be the Raiders' third defensive tackle in the rotation behind Adam Butler and Jonah Laulu. So Laulu's made a lot of noise at training camp. A lot of talk about Laulu at training camp, who's, by the way, a Vegas native. So that defensive tackle rotation, questionable at best, but I think people are dismissing Thomas Booker IV. I won't say, I remember T. Dougie said the Raiders traded Jakorian Bennett for nothing. I disagree with that from the perspective that they fill the position, they address his position of need, and I wouldn't call Thomas Booker IV a nothing. Now, did he do much in Houston and Philadelphia? No. But again, Philadelphia and Houston, those two defenses have been stacked. The Raiders are not stacked at defensive tackle, so he's going to get a lot more playing opportunities at defensive tackle.
Yeah, absolutely. Mo, we got a minute left. The game tonight against the Seahawks, key things I'm watching, I want to see the offensive line and at center, the Jackson Powers-Johnson issue there and what's going to happen there. Like you said, I think he'll end up playing center, but I want to see how the rotations go there as well. And then just a bunch of these young guys. I'm looking forward to seeing I don't think Gentry will get a ton of carries, but they're going to play a little bit, probably a series or so, just to see him against live action as well. Tell me what you're looking for here in tonight's game.
Definitely looking at the offensive line. A lot of talk about Jackson Powers-Johnson, center or guard. Jordan Meredith. We're going to get a look at him at center. That offensive line is what I'm keying on in the first game simply because it's unsettled right now, and this game can go a lot into the decision of who plays where.
That's right. All right. That's going to complete this edition of Silver and Black today. We certainly appreciate you guys being with us. Thanks to all the callers who called in. If you called in and we didn't get you on, we will get you on next time. So keep trying at it. We appreciate it as well. Make sure you follow Mo on x.com. He's got lots of great work, not only at Bleacher Report, but also at sportsnot.com, where he's a Raiders columnist. So check him out at Mo Moton, Moemoton. I am at LV Gully. Also, subscribe to the YouTube page. If you're watching us, thank you for being there. Great chat as always here before the game, since the game's coming up later. Also, make sure you subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your audio. Mo, my man, we get to talk about some football the next time we get together.
Yes, it's that time of year where we get to talk actual games, somewhat exhibition games, but football games nonetheless. Take care, Scott. Take care, Raider Nation.
All right. For our producer at Odyssey, that is Mr. Mike Robier, and for our executive producer over at the radio station, yes, at 101.5 KDON and The Bet, that is Mr. Mark Bonilla. For Marmote, I'm Scott Branson. This has been Silver and Black today. Enjoy the game. Raiders Seahawks will be back next time to talk about it. Thanks again.